Grab some coffee, a Mountain Dew, maybe both. A storm is brewing. The Brainstorm. Welcome to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike.
Welcome to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike. It's a show about us using our decades worth of experience, really, Mike, of helping business owners and business executives possibly navigate some roadblocks that that will arise through business. Obviously, we see our share every single day, and hopefully
they're inevitable.
I know. So hopefully we can use some of those. And we have a number of people that watch our show on YouTube or hear our show on the radio on 100.7 The Point from 9A to 10A on Monday mornings, and then a ton of people that subscribe to our podcast. And really, it's just a show on The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike about business building, and we love doing that. Mike, we're excited about today's show, though. Today's show is just chock full of phenomenal technology and exciting business foundation, sourcing revenue and support, and much, much more. So I love having guests on our show. This guest gives us the ability to take an inside look at some cool technology that can really, Mike, just kind of reshape the education world. I was excited when we talked to her. So welcome to our show, Laura Boccanfuso. So
thank you so
I'll
much.
probably just call you by first name if that's okay.
That works.
She's with Van Robotics. Mm-hmm. Our website is smartrobottutor.com.
You got it.
Yeah, so she has this cool little robot named ABii.
That's right.
And we get to learn all about that. So tell us about Van Robotics, Laura.
So Van Robotics was officially founded in 2016 after about a decade of research into really developing technologies that would support educators, clinicians, interventionists with students that had different learning challenges. And so after a number of years of working in that field and really developing technologies that would support them, we realized that there was a great need for technologies like this in the market that currently wasn't being filled by a company. So we now build smart robot tutors that support core subjects like math and reading for the K through 5 students, our first product to market. We also have a number of other products that we have in development for older students and even for older adults with mild cognitive impairment.
Awesome. So I was going to ask you who the target audience was. So I hear students, but is this something you're trying to reach parents with, or is this the educators themselves?
That's a great question. So we traditionally work with school districts, after-school programs like Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, and some private after-school programs as well, and even some hospitals. Actually, St. Jude got their first robot this year. We were really happy to see that. But just recently, we fast-tracked our home edition for parents and grandparents to purchase for their students because there was such a demand with COVID that even though it wasn't scheduled to be released until later in the year, we decided that we needed to have that product available, mm-hmm. right, to support the demand.
Yeah,
right. So what are some of those real challenges that the students or the families or the educators are facing? And why would they explore a solution like this?
Yeah, so what we found is that there are a number of learning barriers when students learn in school and classrooms. Some of those have to do with confidence and mm-hmm. frustration. Some of them have to do with just a lack of exposure to one-on-one tutoring, that some kids just need additional help and sort of scaffolding to get them through understanding how to solve difficult concepts. And so the way the robot works is to provide a safe environment, a supportive environment. It socially interacts with kids, so it keeps them really engaged and makes them feel really comfortable, so it's okay to make mistakes. And it's all very educationally sound. So all the curriculum that the robot delivers is created by certified teachers. Okay. So it's a very important part of the process, right? We understand sound educational pedagogy is the foundation, and then the basis, or sort of the key to keeping them entertained and going, is all of the social aspects of supportiveness, of fist bumps, high fives, all the things that kids like to do.
So you're actually putting these in classrooms, is that right?
Yeah, we're actually in 22 states now. We're in about 21 school districts. And so they're in a number of schools already across South Carolina.
What does that look like? I mean, per classroom, there's one robot, there's 5. What might that look like?
Yeah, so typically we recommend one robot for every 10 students in a typical classroom. It always depends on the proficiencies of the classroom students. So if you have a normal curve of students in under proficient in math or reading, 1 to 10 is usually a good ratio. So one robot for every 10 students.
Okay.
That gives the students enough time during the week to work one-on-one with the robot to make sure they get in about 2 to 3 sessions per week.
That's really incredible.
So, as a kid, one of my favorite cartoons was the Jetsons, and that's all that I can think about right now when I'm listening to you. Right? It's just like, wow. Back then, I was sitting there watching the Jetsons, and I was like, man, all this crazy technology and advancement. It's like, and then as I got older, I would see some reruns of the Jetsons, and I would be like, there's no way that'll ever happen in my lifetime. And now we actually have robotics that could help teach our children. And what I really like about that is it's cool to those kids, right? Because the Jetsons is no longer on. No great cartoons are on anymore for some reason, right? But this thing is cool because it's new, it's fresh, it's entertaining while it's teaching.
Right.
Where the teacher standing there, that's not new, that's not fresh, that's not something that they've never seen before.
Yeah.
And so that I find that very interesting.
And all the heavy science is buried beneath the cute exterior, right?
Yeah.
So there's actually a pretty
Which makes
powerful
it even
AI
better,
engine.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so, right? I mean, the idea that you would have a robot that could teach standards aligned, sort of core subjects, math and reading to students is really important. And the fact that it's standards aligned is obviously very important. But unless you're creating or collecting information that can help empower the teachers and the parents, the experts in that student's life, you're really not more than just sort of a Band-Aid, right? You want to be able to sort of empower the experts who really understand each student, work with them and understand how to best use the tools in their life. So Rosie from the Jetsons was a maid, and she was a good one. This little ABii, we call her a smart robot tutor, is sort of the next generation, right, of AI-enabled, robot tutors. So
Yeah, I love
awesome.
that.
it's a little different.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is it hard is it difficult for parents when they're bringing this into the home environment? Is it hard for them to learn how to use it, how to put it into practice and make it effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually did a couple of pilot tests. The first one was an alpha test that showed efficacy. How much does the robot actually improve proficiency over a period of time? We had great results from that first study. The second study, we did a beta test in 2018 to collect information about use case and how easy it was to use the robot, how much they wanted to use the robot. And so we basically used the information we collected from that beta test to make sure that the setup process was super streamlined. So now actually ABii will verbally walk you through how to set her up. So you turn her on and she basically tells you, okay, now connect to my Wi-Fi. Next, you want to open up your browser and navigate to this URL.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that makes it super user-friendly, super simple. And everything has to be user-friendly today, right?
Definitely.
I mean, if it's going to be used, it has to be easy.
Absolutely.
So that's very interesting. So you take something fun, you take something new and fresh, and you put it into one of the most difficult industries or areas, which is teaching kids who all learn completely different from each. And I know that I am much more educated when we bring guests on that talks, especially when we're talking about education. We had some other guests on that talked about screen time and devices and things of that nature, a nonprofit. And so now we get to talk about technology and its power in teaching children from a robotic perspective, and it's just very exciting to me. So I mentioned the Jetsons. It's not necessarily Jetson style, right? From those graphics perspective, it's much more advanced from that. But I love that cartoon. It was awesome. And like you said, ABii is like next generation, right? And so, Laura, talk to us about the genesis of Van Robotics and how you got started and your education and why you even wanted to do this.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great question. I have asked myself that question a few times. When I was in grad school, I had raised 3 kids. I'd stayed home with them, and I was looking to go back and teach. And so I'd gone back to grad school. I was majoring in computer science and engineering because I had a real love for technology, and I had some courses before in computer science. So I decided to get my Ph.D. in computer science. And then eventually the plan was to become a professor. So I spent 8 years at USC studying CS and basically looking for ways in which I could make an impact, a positive impact in the world. And so I sought out somebody in the School of Medicine who was working with kids with autism. So that was where I thought there was a lot of attention in the press about autism. I had friends who had kids who had autism. And I thought I had read studies about other universities that were doing research in using robots to really support kids with autism, having a lot of success. So I thought, why not? So I went to the School of Medicine, recruited one person who then recruited 2 people, who then recruited another 2 people. And before long, we had a team of people at the School of Medicine who were interventionists, speech and language pathologists, and even some of the educators that were working in the field with kids with autism. And it was such a fantastic opportunity because they as experts had a lot of field experience, 20 plus years of field experience each in working with that population. So the technology that I built was primarily directed by the experts who had been working with kids. And so after I completed my work here, I was looking for another opportunity to continue that, to finish up a postdoc so that I could eventually still stay on the track to become a professor. I accepted a position at Yale University in the Child Study Center and working alongside the Social Robotics Lab in New Haven, Connecticut. And so moved the family up there, accepted the job. It was a huge transition. But I realized after the first year and a half, 2 years, that there was such a demand. There were so many clinicians that I was working with, and cognitive scientists, developmental psychologists, interventionists and coaches that just kept asking me, can the robot do this? Can you bring me back another one that can do this? Can you make it do this? Can you maybe have it perform this for this particular type of student that I'm working with? And I realized that there just wasn't anything in the market. And so I really started to debate whether I would take the leap and leave academia and do this as a full-time endeavor. And so there came a point somewhere in 2015, end of the year, 2016, when I decided that I was going to give it a shot and that I could help a lot more kids if we had a product that was affordable, that was accessible, and was adaptable for a wider audience of kids that was currently available than the technology that was currently available. And so in August 2017, I took the leap and took the dive and started the company officially, left the university, and moved everybody back to Columbia. So
I'm sure that you were nervously excited when you started the endeavor, right? Because that's just when you started your business and start something, especially at this level. This is a different level than a lot of people start a business at. But anybody starting a business is nervously excited. And so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see where you are today from where you were. I'm sure that the transition from the South to the North versus the North to the South was a different type of transition as well, right?
Definitely.
What about the rest of your family in that transition? They got jobs up there when you moved there, and
my husband runs a nonprofit, so fortunately he could work from. He could kind of bend and flex, and I had done that up until the time that I went back to grad school with his job, and so he was completely, shockingly, he was resilient and said, "Okay, I'm just going to do this."
Very supportive.
Super supportive.
It takes that.
So grateful for that. I don't think I could have really managed that without his support. Because we had 2 kids still at home. Yeah. And so those 2 kids, to their credit, took it as an opportunity to make new friends, extend their boundaries, and kind of learn about Connecticut and living in the North. And I have to say,
like it here or there better?
Oh, they all like it here.
Right.
I mean, this was where they grew up. Coming back was like
home.
Coming back home.
Yeah. So when you decided to make the leap of faith and you stepped out, Was it still, were you solo then? Did you have anyone with you?
I had a co-founder at the time who was debating. She hadn't made the decision yet to leave academia. She was debating actually leaving academia to go become an ABA, an applied behavioral analysis analyst, to basically help kids with autism in the field. And she was also weighing this idea of this crazy startup that I was thinking of endeavoring in. And she ultimately decided not to. I think the pace of it was very fast, and I think the connection with the kids was just going to be very different. So ultimately, she decided to go back and finish her ABA. And so then it was basically a solo endeavor at that point. And that was probably in end of 2017.
So you have the support of your family, an immense support of your family, so much so that they were willingly and looking forward to moving, and multiple times up there, came back. You create this opportunity, this endeavor that you started, and so nothing starts by itself, right? And so you had this co-founder that originally came in. Tell me about what was going on with just getting that support, right? Fundraising, whatever it is that you had to do that create a foundation of your business. Obviously, we've done that here and many other times, and that's not as tough. Exciting sometimes. You're excited, but it's also very, very challenging. Tell us about that. What was that like?
Yeah, it was really challenging. I had applied for grants before I left the university. So I had applied to be a client company with SCRA, and they had supplied some basic, very small seed funding to support the development of our first prototypes. So we were hand building these first prototypes. We had 8 of them initially that we were going to conduct our alpha study with, just to test them out in the market, see if they worked, see how people like them, get our first sort of feedback from the market from them. But after that first sort of grant money started to run out, within a couple of months, I had gotten a call from Techstars. And so the managing director in Austin had called me and said, hey, I heard about your company. I heard about the product you're building. I think it's a really cool product. I think Techstars could help you build a really cool company. Why don't you think about flying out to Austin and pitching for the accelerator in Austin and come out for 3 months? Okay. So I did. So I flew out there. I pitched, literally turned around and flew back. It was pretty wild. And then within just a couple of weeks, I think 3 or 4 weeks after that, we got the call back and said, you guys are in. Can't wait to see you in Austin. So drove my Mini Cooper from Columbia to Austin.
Wow.
And that was a 16-hour trip. I think it was a very long trip. But my husband and I drove out to Austin, settled in a tiny little apartment there, and spent 3 months basically learning the fundamentals, and also getting some capital from Techstars was a tremendous help, because that really provided the foundation. It gave us a little bit of time, right, to help grow and understand how to build sort of the company from there on.
It also gives you that confidence knowing that, hey, maybe I am doing something that really is viable, that we can, other people are seeing my vision, and you can go out there and execute it. And
absolutely,
and continue forward. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's crazy when as a business owner, and we definitely highly recommend just not getting stagnant in what's going on. Not getting kind of depressed if you don't see things moving. Just keep moving. Just keep going after it 100%, because when you do that, other things, other people, other organizations, they start taking notice, and they start wanting some of that because of positive attitudes, and they just see motion. It doesn't seem like you get much help when you're not in motion, but when you're in motion, then people want to come aside you and support you and just tag along, get some of that, if you will, Yeah. And that's what it sounds like would happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. I think being in the company of other companies that were sort of at the same stage, it was also super helpful, because not only are you in this great location with experienced entrepreneurs who have exited multiple companies, who've gotten great connections with large corporations, and have, for all intents and purposes, raised lots of funds themselves, and lots of rounds in addition. It gives you that sense of that you're not sort of alone. So even when things aren't going well, they reflect back and can commiserate a little bit and
Yeah,
say,
no
oh
doubt.
yeah, I was there 2
No
weeks
doubt.
ago. I felt the same way, like just do this, or I tried that, or hang in there.
So they help you avoid pitfalls, and iron sharpens iron. You learn from each other.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So it sounds like to me what happened is, in summation of this segment, if you will, you saw this hole out there, while you were at Yale, and you saw this hole and you decided, okay, here's what we need to do to fill it. You're able to fill that hole with a solution, already understanding who my target market was, right? I
Right.
mean, like you started creating this knowing, okay, here's how we're going to solve the hole. Here's what will solve the hole. Here's who we're going to sell this to or provide this solution to in order for that hole to be solved. And then you needed fundraising, you needed support, you needed infrastructure. It's very
Right.
interesting because that's like all businesses. That's what we do here on the Brainstorm with Matt and Mike, and we're going to dive even deeper.
It feels good to move around.
We have a guest
Set up
on
your
the
Wi-Fi
show.
button to connect me to your Wi-Fi. Or, if you want to do this later, click the log.
We have a very cool guest on our show. You might have just heard. She goes by the name of ABii. She's a very, very cool, what would you say, what is that, 18 inches tall?
About 16, yeah.
16 inches tall, ABii, and she is a teaching robot. And so we have Laura, the founder of Van Robotics, and ABii here that she produced. This thing is very, very cool. I guess I shouldn't call it thing, right? I should call it ABii. So it's
She has a
Thing.
name.
It is
Come
a
on.
I know. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm kind of in awe just looking at it, because just seeing that the engagement of children learning by way of this type of technology and format would have to be extremely high compared to all of the traditional teaching engagement that we see today. Laura, talk to me about just the overall engagement that we see from kids, both in-house and in-home and in school.
Yeah, it's so one of the first things that we looked at when I was back doing research was, how do screen apps compare to a little embodied agent that's interacting with you socially? And what we found is actually there's a number of studies that have compared those two things side to side. Both in terms of cognitive gain. So there was a study actually done in the same lab that I was in at Yale, where they looked at puzzle solving. So they compared, how quickly and how many puzzles can you solve on a screen with just screen help compared to with a robot, an actual sentient robot. And they showed that people had greater gains and could solve more puzzles when they got help from that robot. So what we found is that engagement was always higher and longer. We published a couple papers on that subject specifically. And what we found is that it was also across the board. So it wasn't just with students that had autism, for example, but it was also with our control group who were at that time typically developing kids.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you put it in the classroom, and how frequently might a teacher use ABii?
So ABii can be used every day. Typically, a teacher will provide a lesson, teach her classroom a lesson and provide that classroom instruction. And then they'll break up into smaller groups to work on a specific skill, for example. And that's during independent learning time. And during that independent learning time, teachers may bring back a small group of students to work with them one-on-one. And at that time, the rest of the class is usually working independently. So what we found is that a lot of teachers are using ABii to complement that classroom instruction. So instead of working independently, those students are working with ABii to not only get that extra one-on-one guided practice when they need a little bit more help and explanation on how to solve problems, but it's also collecting information about where their comprehension might be failing and how their attention is playing a role in their performance, which are two really important things that aren't currently being recorded anywhere or tracked anywhere in the classroom.
So you're telling me that it's tracking each individual student as it interacts. So it's keeping some track record and making adjustments according to their learning style?
Right. It's not, so essentially it's tracking or it's detecting performance. So if they get questions right or wrong, and it's also adapting to attention. So ABii is COPA compliant, so it it only records the minimal information necessary. While it's paying attention to the student's attention, it's not actually recording any video or any images. It's not recording voice, but it is adapting to a target. So if it notices that the student's attention has gone away from the screen where important information is being displayed, the robot will actually pause the lesson and encourage that student to get back focused on the screen so they don't miss something important. Or if it's chronic and their attention is really just plummeting along with their performance, the robot will actually suggest a brain break, which could be anything from a get up and wiggle break for the young students to a stretch break or even a breathing break. And she'll actually lead the students through that break as well.
That's
Wow,
incredible.
That is.
I wish they had this when I was a kid.
I wish we had it right now for the workforce. I mean, can you go ahead and get version 2 for the workforce for us right now?
You can see us in the Van Robotics offices. Occasionally, you'll see people doing the neck roll with ABii.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And I want to also remind people that we also have our show is recorded and then put on our YouTube channel. People can go to thebrainstormradio.com, which is our website. They can subscribe to our podcast there. But more importantly, in this particular case, because we actually have ABii here on our set, if you're listening to us live on the radio on Monday mornings from 9A to 10A, then please also go to thebrainstormradio.com and go to our YouTube channel and watch our show, watch this show after we put it on our YouTube channel. So you can actually see ABii in action, because that was ABii talking just a few moments ago, unless people thought I was just throwing my voice in a robotic type of manner, which, by the way, doesn't sound very robotic, you know? And so I'm used to the old Styx song. That's the only thing I know about robotics. But this, I mean, it doesn't sound very robotic at all. It sounds very engaging. It certainly has an engaging appearance. And so I can see how children can stay attracted to it for long periods of time and do their studies. There's no doubt about that. Talk to me about, I saw on your website the Shark Tank. We talked a little bit about that at break. Talk to me about, and what viewer or listener hasn't probably seen the show, The Shark Tank, and gone, man, I'd like to pitch my product or my services to the Shark Tank, right? I would just like to have that experience. Talk to me about that experience. How did you come about being on the Shark Tank, and then the overall experience and how you felt like it helped you?
So I think it was early 2019. We were getting ready to, we were in the middle of a funding round, actually. So we were raising capital for our seed round to manufacture our first batch of 700 robots. And one day I just got an email message from the executive producer at Shark Tank into the info email account. So they contacted you.
You thought it was spam, probably.
They contacted us on the info account on our website. So I thought it was just somebody messing around.
Right.
Hey, I'm the Shark Tank executive director. I just deleted it. Didn't think twice about it. I went along my business, continuing the round, finishing all of the logistical concerns, all of the manufacturing concerns we were dealing with that time really consumed most of my days during that early part of 2019. And so just a few weeks later, I got another message from the same person. And I did a little Google and found out that indeed this person does likely work at Shark Tank and could in fact be an executive producer.
Could be a real email.
So I quickly emailed him back a very curt message and just said, hey, great, sounds good. Let's jump on a call and chat. And sure enough, it was the real deal. And so that launched the beginning of a 6-month process. And in the midst of which we closed our seed round at the end of March that year. We had pushed go on the manufacturing process. So the assembly line, the components, ordering, all of the sort of the pipeline of things that needed to happen in order to get 700 robots delivered to Columbia, South Carolina was underway. And so the next 6 months was spent working with associate editors or producers rather, to get prepared for the show.
Yeah, that's very cool. So obviously, because I already know, because I was asking you some of these questions on break, and you were telling me that you weren't selected on Shark Tank, right? As I guess a shark didn't invest in the business, but it was still a great learning experience, you told me. So tell me how you feel like the overall experience helped, from figuring out pitches to all of that type of stuff?
Yeah, it definitely was an informative process. And I think part of what I took away from that experience was two things. One, remember who your market is. That's key.
That's key.
And they are paramount. And the second thing is, working with producers who understood how to format a pitch in a different way, in a very soundbitey way, I think was important, because it does kind of make you boil everything down to sort of the most important tidbits, right?
Of
Sound
what
bites.
your target market wants to hear.
Exactly.
Right? Man, you hit the nail on the head, because you can't forget what you know.
Right.
Right. And so you feel like your target market wants to hear one thing, and then
Right.
your target market, who doesn't know everything that you know, probably is not going to consume it at the same rate that you're going to deliver it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a very good key point.
Yeah. And the other thing is, right, is that, when you're raising money for your company, there are a number of factors that take place that don't necessarily mean your product or your company is not a viable, strong, very potentially
Right.
successful company. I think that's really important to keep into perspective, because, we really work for our customers. We serve our customers. They are, as I said, paramount. And if investors understand our ability to meet their needs, to grow our company successfully, then we have a great winning combination. But it's always a two-way street. If they don't quite understand that or grasp it or appreciate it, then it's a no deal for us too, right?
Yeah, you literally just hit the nail on the head of all business types, especially yours with technology, and everybody's wanting to introduce some sort of technology. Hey, you're hearing about ABii here on the Brainstorm with Matt and Mike. We love having you join us. And as you know, if you've been listening to us, today's guest is Dr. Laura Boccanfuso with Van Robotics. Website is smartrobottutor.com. It's awesome. You can actually go there and see the robot in action. It's got a ton of resources, videos. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, instead of listening to our podcast or listening to us live on the radio, you're actually seeing ABii, 16-inch tall, learning tutor robot. And this thing is just cool. And so one of the things that Laura was talking about is just absolutely knowing your target market. And so, Laura, your target market is who? Tell us the applications in which this thing is being deployed on average for the most part.
Yeah, so our target market is the K through 5 classroom or the parent of a K through 5 student.
So in the classroom, so a school district.
School
right?
districts are great. After-school
Standalone
programs,
schools.
charter schools,
Yep.
private schools, libraries, as I said before, hospitals. Really, the applications are pretty wide, because it's a grab and go device. It works with any device. It's device agnostic, which means as long as the screen is large enough for the robot to be able to illustrate information on it, so that can be an Android tablet, an iPad, a Windows machine, a Google Chromebook, a MacBook, a Mac Air. Pretty much any device, as long as it has a Google Chrome browser, will work perfectly well with the robot. So we really designed it to be as easy to plug and play as possible.
Mm-hmm. So, and then your, I don't want to call it primary and secondary target markets, but your additional target market is at home, right? At home of a K through 5th grade, right? Mm-hmm. And so I love that. I was looking at your website. You have both models there on your website. It looks like the classroom model, if you will, is unlimited students, whereas the at-home model, which is significantly less priced, right? Which, by the way, I don't feel like either robot is overpriced.
Very affordable.
I mean, I think it's
For what it is.
very affordable.
Especially.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really wanted to, and the whole pricing of the robot started with, what is the absolute minimum we can really invest in the hardware. We didn't need to make it overly sophisticated, as some robots that are currently in the market cost $10,000. They have 52 degrees of freedom in the arms, head, and legs, and knees, and so forth. We just didn't need that level of degrees of freedom. So we wanted to make it as affordable and accessible as possible. school and still be social and interactive. She's still able to give fist bumps and high fives. So there's a lot of sort of design thinking that went into that process of how to build it.
You've been successful at that. I mean, we're talking about the home edition is only a little over $500, and the at home, at the school edition, which is unlimited students,
right,
is less than $900. I mean, we're talking extremely affordable for something that can completely change the direction of learning.
Yeah. So exactly. So, and if you have kids under the age of, say 10 in grade 5, it can serve your whole family, right? It can serve all the students as they grow up. You don't need to have a different robot for different grades. It can serve all the kids from K through 5. It comes with all the core curriculum. So math and reading content comes included with the robot. There's no subscription necessary. That again was a design decision that we made very early on to really facilitate ease of use, right? So that people wouldn't feel tied down to something. And so that's something that we were really proud of, and I think has allowed us to open up the market to home sales this year.
Mm-hmm. So I have 3 little ones at home. One that will be in 5th grade, 2nd grade, and 1st grade. And I know for my wife.
Perfect. Extra one.
You got a credit card machine here with you?
Here, give me your credit card. I'll type it in and get it on order for you right now.
Right, we could wrap this one up.
Yeah, let's wrap that one. Yeah.
And so I know that my wife runs into a scenario where they just, oftentimes are combative when it comes to tackling homework, and especially with math.
Right.
That usually one of us is capable of helping them know if the answer is right, but their approach may be quite different than what we were taught, when we were their age. And so I really see how this can build confidence and help reinforce the way they're learning today, and teaching them the same way that they're going to learn in the classroom, which is so important.
Yeah. So we have on our team, we have certified K through 5 teachers that create all of the curriculum. And that's really key because we want to make sure, again, that the lessons they're receiving are going to be really focused on the right topics, that they're going to be standards aligned, and that really, as you said, are similar to the process they're learning in school. I remember lattice math. I don't know if you all have kids that are old enough to do lattice math, but it's a very different way of solving a two-digit multiplication problem.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to draw the lattice to complete the math, but ABii has illustrations today that are something that the kids would see in school tomorrow. So it's really important for us to make sure that continuity of education is really part of the learning process when you plug in ABii and take her lessons.
Right. And so I can see where this helps engage the student, even at home, and which gives the parents a little bit of peace of mind and maybe a little bit of hair back for
respite.
People like me, where they just, so you don't have to fight them. They're excited about going and tackling the homework, which helps them advance and have less challenges when they're back in the classroom. And I could see such a benefit to it. And of course, there's tutoring costs. A lot of folks will go out and just hire a tutor,
sure,
but you would pay for a tutor you'd have to pay for that many times over for, in comparison, a small fee to pay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, I want to take you to the business side of things just for a second before we jump off the air. If people are watching or listening to our show, and they're thinking, wow, she went from really taking a track of academia to being a professor to teaching and then getting assigned to this role or taking this position and moving your family and then kind of discovering the robotic side of things and driving, and then went out there and sourced support, sourced money to, seed money to get going. I mean, you've been down the route of a lot of things and a lot of different foundations that a lot of business owners will never get the opportunity to see, but a lot of business owners need to do it. So if you had the ability to kind of give some advice to startups, some business owners, folks just like yourself who might have come down those routes and were struggling to figure out which way to go, what type of advice would you give to some business owners? How would they get started?
Yeah, For me personally, I think the key to being able to get through all of those really major hurdles in the beginning was diversifying our approach. So we weren't just going after, for example, our first grant was with SCRA, but we also sought some angel funding and we got some private funding. We went back to the Department of Education. We got a grant from them. So I think for us, the key was always having an open mind to where that support could come from, and always thinking about it strategically in a way that would contribute to the mission of the company. So as long as that funding wasn't going to take us away from the mission of the company, it was on the table. So whether that came from individuals or that came from an institution or it came in the form of a grant, I think that ultimately, that really helped us. It really, like you said, it provided that foundation in the beginning that allowed us to then have the opportunity to get a product to then eventually be able to sell it.
So out of all of that, you told us the things that you were able to go get. How in comparison to what you got, what was the percentage of what you got from what you went after, right?
Very small.
Very small, right? So that shows you the hustle. In other words, people have to hustle out there and go after a lot to get a little.
And I think the other point is don't give up just because you hear no once or something's not the right fit. Don't think that means your model is broken. It may not be the right investors. It might not be the right client opportunity today.
100 times over, definitely. And that's why I say, open yourself up as long as the funding is actually contributing to your mission, because the majority of those people are going to say no, or the majority of those grants are not going to come through, or the majority of those efforts aren't going to necessarily pay off. But, you said something about keeping in motion and keeping it going and just putting in more irons in the fire and trying to see what's going to hit. That's really key, because you can't ever get comfortable, right? Yeah. That's the key is, once you're sort of on the road to entrepreneurship, you're always learning something. And, I think making sure that you're sort of open again and trying different things is so important, because we got shut down a ton of times.
Right. It's probably the same with your target market too. After you got the seed money, you started producing robots and was ready to take it to the market. It was probably, you told me you're at 21 school districts now. Well, you didn't start with 21 school districts, and there's a lot more to go, right? And so you just keep on motion and be successful at it over time. Dr. Laura Boccanfuso, we really appreciate you joining us. We'll post links on our website and our social media about how to get in touch with them. Go check it out, smartrobottutor.com. Thanks for listening to The Brainstorm with Matt and Mike.
Thank you.